to the Good Path podcast. I'm Chad Lengard, and I'm really excited you're here. Thanks for joining me in this new podcast I'm starting. Really excited to have you here. And if you don't know me, although most of you probably do at this point, I'm a pastor in the Vancouver area of BC, in Abbotsford. And I've got 4 daughters and a wife and a little dog named Charlie. And life is good. We're loving life here in the Fraser Valley of BC. And I've been kind of sharing this idea of starting a podcast with some people. And they've been asking me, okay, Chad, well, what's this whole thing about? So Good Path is about goodness. You know, our world often operates at an inch deep and a mile wide. Social media reels, fast, shallow, entertaining, pain-free. But that pace of life and that kind of living leaves us hungry, it leaves us unsatisfied. And I think deep down, we all really want substance. We all really need depth in our experience of life. So this show is about building and celebrating goodness culture, wherever we find it. And, we're going to explore that notion of goodness. Like, what is goodness? I think we know it when we see it, but maybe it's hard to articulate at times. And we're going to ask questions like, well, goodness according to whom, and how do we get to goodness? We're going to have conversations with people who are doing interesting things to bring goodness into the world. I'm a pastor, and so we're going to talk to some people from the world of church and theology and not-for-profits. We're going to talk to people coming from the creative arts and music, social justice. Some of the upcoming names, guests that I've got coming in the new year here is Doug Frederick, the local pastor here. Brad Tews, musician, health and wellness entrepreneur. Dan Kent is another pastor from the States. Joash Thomas is doing a lot of great work with International Justice Mission in Canada. Derek Emery, a friend, another local pastor. So we've got some great people coming onto the show, and it's going to be really interesting, I hope, for you. And just the heart of the show, it's really easy to be cynical in the world we live in. But, if we open our eyes, we can see the goodness is all around us. If we pay attention, we can discover that the way to goodness is the destination. And I think in our world, we're tempted to think along the lines that the ends justify the means, whether we're trying to get to something politically or whether we're trying to get somewhere in our life, that we can get to the destination, however we get there is fine. But to live a good life, you need to walk a path of goodness. You can't get to goodness without walking on a path of goodness. And so just a bit of background for me, like the intentional pursuit of goodness for me began in the back of a truck. I was 17 years old. I was driving home from a May-long weekend of time with friends, drinking. I didn't usually drink. That wasn't really a normal part of my life as a teenager, but that weekend I did. And I was driving home kind of feeling gross and guilty and miserable. And I was going to a family meal. I was on my way home to a family meal, and I was going to be eating dinner with my grandparents and my extended family, my aunts and uncles, my parents. And I felt like, what have I been doing? Like that meal, that feast that I'm going to, that epitomizes the good life. That epitomizes goodness, those relationships, the way those people live, compared to kind of the nonsense that I had been involved in over the weekend with all of that kind of ridiculousness that went on. And for me, there was like a real stark contrast, like you can go this way or you can go this way. And it was clear to me that I wanted to go to the good path of a rich life, of rich relationships, and centered around God and our faith as a family. And for me, that was a really defining moment that has really changed the trajectory of my life, and I'm really grateful for it. And so that decision led me into a vocational path of church and pastoral ministry. And I'm passionate about my opportunity as a pastor to create culture of goodness in the churches where I work, and to bring more goodness into the people's lives that I work with and serve as a pastor. I'm really thankful for it. And there was a moment back in college. I went to Bible college, and I was listening to a sermon, and I'd heard a million sermons growing up, but this one stands out, and I have no idea what it was about. But I remember feeling like when I was listening to the sermon, felt the good news through the pastor. I felt it. There was something happening in the sermon that wasn't just informational, but it was like transformational. And I felt something different. And I remember just feeling like, I want to do that. If I'm going to be a pastor, if I'm going to be doing this, that's what I want to do. And so it's kind of led me to believe that the good news of Jesus isn't just heard, it has to be felt. And that's been my experience over time. I've seen a lot of people around me becoming disenfranchised with church, disenfranchised with the institution of church. A lot of people claim to be spiritual, but not religious. That kind of thing where I don't want to be a part of an organization. I just want to practice and my faith on my own, whether they've been hurt or whether they've been just disillusioned with kind of their experience. And we hear a lot about the phenomenon of deconstruction. And I want to maybe have some good conversations on this show that address kind of what's happening there. That maybe the goodness of the good news message can be felt and experienced a bit more if we do some evaluation, if we do some more introspection as churches, as pastors, as people who are trying to find a good way in our faith. Maybe there's ways that we could do that is good for more people. Maybe we're missing something. Maybe within the institution of church, we can address some of that dynamic. And I think for some people, I mean, there's a lot of great churches, there's a lot of great pastors, a lot of great things going on. But for some people, within the institution of church, it feels like a bit of a facade. It feels a bit hollow, not rich and deep. I read a great book, and maybe you've read it or heard of it. It's called A Church Called Tove by Scott McKnight and Laura Barringer. And then the book is all about how to create a goodness culture in your church. And it addresses harmful dynamics in churches like narcissism and nepotism, abuse and cover up. It highlights some tragic stories of churches and church leaders who are very harmful to their congregations and individuals. And it paints a hopeful picture of how churches can create cultures of goodness, where the goodness of God is experienced through the people and the culture in the church. Rather than protecting the institution, people are elevated, people are protected. And so there's a lot of people who have felt like damaged and hurt through the church, whether it was a pastor or a culture. And I think there's just a lot of really good questions we can ask and explore to get to the bottom of why that kind of thing happens. And three kind of values I want to highlight on this show are curiosity, compassion, and courage. And I think curiosity is really important because it asks hard questions that have implications that can really change things. I didn't grow up really as a curious person. I just sort of like accepted things for how they were. But my wife has really challenged me on this, and she's very curious, and she always wants to know why. And I love that she has that inner sense of permission to ask why. I love that she's not afraid to ask and to pursue answers. And I think I by nature feel like I'm putting someone out or I am interrogating someone to ask questions and get clarity and be curious, where she's like, no, I just want to know what's going on and what's happening. And I think we need to embrace curiosity. I think we need to embrace intellectual honesty, because we get stunted and we don't grow when we're not curious. And often we can get into, if we're not curious, there can be things happening around us that aren't good. And we can just sort of settle and say, well, that's just the way things are. Unless we're curious, we might not even realize that there's a way to fix them or a way to address them. And we just sort of settle into status quo. So I think curiosity is a really helpful dynamic and a value I want to emphasize on Good Path. The other one is compassion. Compassion is really significant. And I think we would all say compassion is a good thing. And compassion is just really asking the question, I wonder what it's like for those people to exist. Or I wonder what their experience of life is. Or I feel something, I'm moved within for the people around me. And compassion is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It's similar to empathy. But I think unless we're compassionate, we're not gonna really walk on a good path. We're going to walk in a little bit more of a selfish path, more of a self-serving path. We're not thinking about what it's like to be someone else. And so that's the second one. The third one is courage. And in order to be curious and compassionate, you really need courage. Fear as a motivation is never going to take us anywhere productive. Fear as a motivation is always going to be just it's going nowhere good. So it takes courage to move towards those who are different than us, to ask, well, what's it like for you? Why is this your experience? How am I contributing to it? How can we move together into a better future? And so those three things I'm really wanting to emphasize: curiosity, compassion, and courage. So this podcast is going to be a space to explore goodness, good theologies, good deeds that make the world a better place, good ways of being in the world. Some of my guests are going to be writing books or just doing good things in their communities and the world. I'll be sharing some of my own musings and some of my own journey along the way here. And I want to share with you some of the people who I've been impacted by and just learn with them, learn from them along with you. And hopefully it doesn't turn into an echo chamber. I want to have a diverse set of views and opinions. And having said that, at the outset, that all the opinions expressed here on my show may not be the opinion of me, the host, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we need to have conversations where we disagree and we can still kind of move together and find out where the common ground is. In the world we live in now, that's really important. So again, just to talk about empathy, it's asking someone that you really disagree with and you can't really relate to, okay, well, how did you get to where you are? Because I don't understand where you're at. And instead of writing people off, instead of sort of making assumptions about people, having empathy is going, okay, well, what is it like for you? And tell me how you got there. Because we'll find a lot of us are really we're all really looking for a good life. We're all trying to find the good path in life. We attempt to find it in different ways. And I think it's important for us to know that we're probably more alike than we realize. And so empathy is good. Empathy can change the world. I really think that empathy is what Jesus demonstrated when he became a human being, when he was incarnated into our existence as a human race. He stepped into our shoes, became one of us. And, if more of us can do that, we'll be in a much better place together. So this is a good path. And I'm really excited you're here. Please just follow along with what's happening. You can subscribe to, we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify. So follow along, and I'm just excited to be able to share some of the stuff that's coming up with you. And hope you have a great new year here, and peace. We'll talk to you soon.